Have you ever wondered what made those early Looney Tunes cartoons from the 1930s so utterly strange, yet impossible to look away from? Well, you're in luck, because we're about to take you behind the scenes of some of the strangest, most fascinating secrets from this legendary cartoon. Looney Tunes was originally created just to sell sheet music. Imagine a movie theater in 1930. It's not full of kids. It's filled with adults in suits, hats, polished shoes, perfume, and cigarette smoke curling upward in slow motion. The air smells like cheap tobacco and velvet drapes. Film wasn't clean. It flickered. It buzzed. And before the main feature began, studios needed something to warm up the audience, often music, shorts, or newsreels. Warner Brothers had just bought a music publishing company, and they were trying to figure out how to squeeze profit out of it. Not from records, not from radio, from sheet music sales. So they asked Harmon and Ising to make animated shorts starring a character named Bosko. Not Bugs, not Daffy, not Porky, Bosko. His voice was nasal and his face was mostly dots. His entire purpose? Sing songs that audiences would later buy and play at home. The animators weren't thinking about slapstick. They weren't thinking about timeless characters. They were thinking about how a melody could be drawn into movement. Animation wasn't paced the way it is today. Every scene moved like a dance. Characters bobbed, hopped, twisted, and wiggled even when nothing was happening. It wasn't for comedy. It was so the rhythm of a song would stick in your head. The animators animated to tempos, not storyboards. If you listen closely to the earliest Looney Tunes, you can still hear it. Every character's footsteps land on a beat. Every punchline hits on a measure. Even the background movements feel choreographed. The structure came from music, not narrative. Now compare that to today's animation. Characters have arcs, episodes have themes. There are writers' rooms and story meetings. Back then, a cartoon was just a delivery vehicle for melody. It feels almost alien. Why make a cartoon just to promote a sheet of paper with printed notes? Because in the 1930s, that was how music spread. Radios were expensive. Live bands needed material. Families played piano at home. If a tune sounded catchy in a cartoon, people bought it. That was the business model. And it gives Looney Tunes this bizarre origin story. You weren't supposed to fall in love with Bugs Bunny. You were supposed to walk away humming. Do you remember the first time you heard a Looney Tunes theme and didn't think about the music, but the feeling it gave you? The original Looney Tunes weren't meant for kids at all. This is the part people always forget. Early Looney Tunes aired in theaters before adult films. No one involved imagined children as the audience. The humor wasn't sanitized. It wasn't gentle. It was surreal, unhinged, chaotic, and grown up. Characters drank, they smoked, they used guns, not as props, but as punchlines. Humor wasn't softened into cartoon logic. It was closer to vaudeville, speakeasies, and burlesque humor. The jokes were physical, explosive, fast, and sometimes violent. Think about the very feel of the 1930s. The Great Depression was everywhere. People needed distraction, escape, and spectacle. Cartoons didn't have to teach moral lessons. They didn't have censors breathing down their necks yet. The rules were not yet written. It was the lawless era of animation. Animators could animate a character falling off a cliff, then get up and keep dancing. They could smash faces flat with frying pans. They could blow themselves up with dynamite. It wasn't about realism, it was about catharsis. Now compare it to today. Safety warnings, legal departments, content guidelines, child psychology research. Humor is softened. Violence is symbolic or stylized. But in 1930, the characters were anarchists because the world itself felt anarchic. People weren't looking for childhood innocence on screen. They wanted release from the pressure of their lives, and Looney Tunes delivered. Do you think that's part of why Looney Tunes stuck in your memory? Not because it was safe, but because it tasted like rebellion. The first recurring character wasn't Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, or Porky Pig. His name was Bosko. Bosko is the forgotten ancestor of every Looney Tunes icon. The animation style was crude compared to what was coming, but revolutionary for 1930. Bosko had rubber limbs, endless smiles, and the kind of flexible body shape that let animators stretch and twist him into any emotion or motion they wanted. He wasn't built from logic, he was built from fluidity. Close your eyes and imagine those early black and white frames. The background isn't crisp, the edges fuzz, the lines wobble. You can almost feel the celluloid flicker. The animation isn't clean or precise, there are jittering imperfections. But those imperfections give the world texture. The ink lines sometimes change thickness mid-shot because the animators were literally redrawing every frame by hand. This was the era before Xerox machines or rotoscoping shortcuts. If you wanted a character to smile, you had to draw a new smile. If you wanted them to dance, you drew every single limb movement. That effort created a strange intimacy. The animators' hands were visible in the art. Bosko bounced and slid with real physical weight because there were real human hands controlling every motion. But he didn't last. Eventually, Warner Brothers wanted more personality. Bosko was cheerful but generic. He had no edge, and animation was starting to evolve. People wanted characters who felt distinct. Bosko faded away, and the animators recycled his DNA into new experiments. Without Bosko, there would be no Porky. Without Porky, no Bugs. A single forgotten character gave birth to a pantheon. When you think about Looney Tunes today, do you ever wonder how many characters had to exist before the ones you love even appeared? Early Looney Tunes used real Hollywood orchestra recordings. This is one of the strangest production facts. Even though these were cartoons, the music wasn't made by a little sound department. Warner Bros. Owned major music assets, so they used live orchestras to score the cartoons. Not cheap hired musicians, full symphonic recordings. The same talent that scored feature films. Imagine the recording sessions. Musicians in a studio full of microphones and stands, wearing suits and evening dresses. The room smells like polished wood and brass. You can hear the soft rustle of pages turning and the faint clink of instruments being tuned. And then someone starts the cue, and the entire room erupts in coordinated sound. This wasn't background music, it was cinematic. It gave tiny cartoons the grandeur of epic cinema. Animation synced to real music changed how animators worked. They didn't draw action and then add sound later. They listened to recordings first, then animated the motion to match the beats. The sound dictated the motion. It's the exact opposite of how animation is produced today. Today, the music follows the animation. Back then, the animation served the music. That's why early Looney Tunes have that rhythmic, musical quality. Scenes don't just happen. They dance, pulse, and accelerate with musical cues. Even explosions feel choreographed. Characters hop, glide, stretch, and compress as if they're part of a symphony. Think about watching a modern cartoon. The movement is smooth and predictable, but in early Looney Tunes, motion is part of the soundtrack. You don't just see a scene, you feel it unfolding in musical time. Do you ever miss when cartoons moved like music instead of animation? The animation style came from rubber hose art. Characters didn't have bones. This is the detail everyone remembers subconsciously, but few ever articulate. Characters in early Looney Tunes didn't have elbows or knees, limbs curved like hoses, joints bent in impossible directions. It wasn't realism, it was rebellion against realism. Why draw characters with bone structure when you can make arms stretch like licorice and legs coil like springs? It wasn't laziness, it was strategy. Rubber hose animation was faster, cheaper, more expressive. Animators didn't have to think about anatomy. They didn't have to worry about proportion or structural consistency. They could focus on movement, rhythm, energy. It made characters feel alive in a way realism couldn't. Movement snapped back like elastic. A character could twist around itself and snap into a new pose instantly. And if you remember watching Looney Tunes as a kid, something about those movements made the characters feel unpredictable. Today's animation looks clean and smooth, but sometimes it feels too perfect. Rubber hose animation felt human because it was imperfect. You could sense the animator's imagination in every curve and bounce, and that style didn't just define Looney Tunes, it defined the entire spirit of early American animation. Do you ever miss when cartoons didn't obey physics or reality or even logic, but simply obeyed fun? Early Looney Tunes were terrifyingly experimental. Audiences in 1930 were not accustomed to this level of visual experimentation. Animators were bending not just the rules of anatomy, but also time, space, and narrative expectation. A character could leap from a window, bounce off a cloud, and land perfectly inside a teacup, and the audience laughed at the absurdity while marveling at the sheer ingenuity. Today, we see experimental animation online or in art films, but in 1930, this was mainstream entertainment, reaching every small-town theater and urban cinema. The thrill came not just from laughter, but from witnessing something unprecedented. Something alive in ways reality never could be. Can you feel the pulse of that early audience? The nervous anticipation, the astonished delight, knowing that anything could happen and that every second on screen was a small miracle of ink, timing, and imagination. That unpredictability, that willingness to take risks is what made these cartoons unforgettable, not just then, but for every generation that followed. Rubber hose animation gave characters impossible flexibility. When characters in cartoon move, every limb stretches, curves, and snaps back in perfect, impossible rhythm. This style, dominant in the earliest Looney Tunes, wasn't just a visual gimmick. It was a way to make characters move fluidly while minimizing the complexity of drawing joints realistically. You can almost feel the elasticity in your fingertips, the tension in the air as each stretch anticipates a bounce, a twist, or a sudden squish. Today, CGI rigs often impose physical limits, even for exaggerated cartoons. But in 1930, the world was boundless. A character could stretch from one side of the frame to the other in a single motion, defying every law of anatomy and physics, and yet it felt natural, even thrilling. That visual elasticity created a rhythm, a pulse that drew audiences into the cartoon's logic. Can you sense the hypnotic quality of it? The way your eyes follow a stretch and expect it to snap back in perfect timing. That's the secret power of rubber hose animation, its ability to make the impossible feel alive and joyous. Adult humor was hidden in plain sight. Early Looney Tunes were full of sly adult jokes, layered beneath the slapstick that entertained children. They had to walk a delicate line, amuse grown-ups without alienating the younger audience or offending theater owners. Today, adult humor in cartoons is often blatant or coded in ways that require insider knowledge. In 1930, spotting one of these subtle gags gave audiences a thrill, a small conspiratorial joy that made you feel seen, clever, and connected to the animator's mischievous spirit. Think about that sensation, laughing quietly at a joke that others might miss, feeling like you've discovered a hidden treasure. That dual-layer humor created intimacy between cartoon and viewer, a secret wink that made each viewing richer and more engaging. Sound effects were crafted entirely by hand. Every boing, crash, squeak, and thud in early Looney Tunes was painstakingly produced by Foley artists manipulating these props. A door slam might come from slamming a tin sheet. Character bouncing could be the sound of a rubber ball dropped on wood. You can almost feel the textures in your hands as they hit, scrape, and shake these objects, the vibrations resonating through the floorboards, syncing with the projector's flicker. Today, most sound effects are digital, cleaned, and repeated endlessly. In 1930, sound was alive, imperfect, human. It gave every squeak weight, every crash presence, and every movement a palpable energy. Can you hear that tiny creak and feel it echo through your body as the character lands, slides, or spins? That's the tactile, almost magical quality of handcrafted sound, an invisible performer shaping your laughter in real time. The name Looney Tunes wasn't used immediately. It's easy to forget, but the earliest cartoons were not branded under the Looney Tunes name. Some were released simply as Bosko the Talking Kid, or other experimental titles. Picture a small-town theater, the audience unaware that they're witnessing the beginning of a franchise that would endure for a century. They were captivated not by the logo on the marquee, but by the chaos unfolding on screen. The stretching, the squeaking, the improbable motion, the music dancing in perfect sync with every twist. Today, branding is central. Names, logos, and franchises are meticulously managed. Back then, it was about the magic in front of you, immediate and visceral. Can you imagine walking out of that theater feeling enchanted, laughing at a character whose name you might forget, yet whose personality and antics are etched forever in your memory? That spontaneous, nameless thrill is something modern marketing struggles to replicate. It relied entirely on the power of animation to connect with human emotion. Early Looney Tunes borrowed heavily from Vaudeville. Picture yourself in a tiny vaudeville theater, the wooden floor creaking beneath performers, the smell of stage paint and dust clinging to the air, the faint metallic tang of sweat from the performers as they moved under the hot footlights. The audience leans forward, anticipating every pratfall, every exaggerated gesture, every perfectly timed pause. That energy didn't just vanish when animators picked up their pencils. They translated it, frame by frame, into the first Looney Tunes. Every bounce, tumble, and slapstick gag you see on screen is lifted straight from live theater performances. You can almost feel Bosko's legs flailing with the rhythm of a performer's desperate scramble or the subtle tilt of his hat, mimicking a comedian's playful smirk. Today, slapstick exists, but it rarely carries the same physical immediacy. Watching a modern cartoon, you may laugh, but it lacks the tactile tension, the sense that a body might really fall or a chair might collapse, that vaudeville infused into animation. Early audiences felt that tension. They sensed the possibility of disaster, the thrill of chaos constrained only by imagination. Can you feel it? The way your body leans forward with anticipation, the tiny laugh that escapes because you're sharing the performer's secret energy across time and ink. That connection between live human performance and drawn chaos is what made those early shorts feel dangerously alive. Jazz dictated the rhythm of the animation. Now, imagine sitting in a theater with a live jazz band, the brass section blaring, the drums tapping out a syncopated heartbeat, the piano keys scattering unpredictably. That same energy dictated the very movement of animated characters. Bosko's every tiptoe, leap, and spin was synchronized with the music. Animators weren't just adding a background track, they were creating motion to match the music's flow. The rhythm influenced timing, exaggeration, and comedic impact, making the animation feel almost physically connected to the audience's own heartbeat. Contrast that with modern cartoons, where music often punctuates action, but rarely feels inseparable from it. In 1930, audiences could sense the kinetic energy, the push and pull of the brass, the tension of the drums mirrored in Bosko's body, the swells of the piano reflected in a spinning teacup. It was a multi-sensory experience. The music and animation became one. Imagine your own pulse syncing with a trumpet's crescendo as Bosko flails across the screen. That's the unique thrill early viewers felt, a visceral connection that turned passive observation into bodily participation. Can you feel your chest tighten slightly just picturing it? That's the power of music-driven animation. It makes your body respond before your brain even fully registers why. Imperfections were intentionally preserved. As we've noted earlier, every frame was hand-drawn, and despite the meticulous attention, imperfections naturally appeared. An arm bent too far, a mouth misaligned for a moment, or a background element wobbling. Instead of erasing them, animators left these tiny flaws in, and audiences found them charming. They made the characters feel alive, breathing, slightly unpredictable, human in a way computers cannot replicate. Compare that to today, where every curve and pixel is corrected to perfection, leaving some animations feeling sterile. Early viewers experienced a heartbeat behind every line, sensing the human effort that made each motion possible. Imagine watching Bosko stumble, bounce, or spin, and knowing that the mistake on screen is a real organic gesture frozen in time. That imperfection created intimacy, a subtle acknowledgement that art is alive, fallible, and endlessly inventive. Can you picture the thrill of spotting these tiny inconsistencies and laughing because they give the character personality, quirks, and soul? That's the secret magic woven into early Looney Tunes. Imperfection as life. Frames were reused, but with cunning precision. Now imagine a bustling studio filled with dozens of artists, each responsible for countless frames. Drawing every single frame from scratch was exhausting, so animators cleverly reused sequences, walk cycles, spins, jumps, but did so with slight alterations, timing tweaks, or context changes. This allowed them to focus creative energy on the most dramatic or comedic moments, while maintaining continuity. You can almost feel the tension in the room, the rhythmic scratching of pencils on celluloid, the meticulous timing required to ensure a reused frame didn't feel out of place. Today, reusing motion can feel lazy or repetitive, but in 1930 it was an ingenious solution. Efficiency paired with artistry. The audience didn't see repetition. They saw fluidity and dynamism. Think about that. Hundreds of frames recycled invisibly, yet each viewing felt fresh, spontaneous, unpredictable. Can you imagine the precision and creativity required? Knowing a single misstep could break the illusion entirely? That delicate balance is part of what made early Looney Tunes mesmerizing. The blend of resourcefulness and artistry that makes the cartoons feel effortless, even as they were meticulously orchestrated. They referenced contemporary culture with uncanny immediacy. Picture yourself in a 1930s theater. On screen, a background character wears a hat that mirrors a politician you read about that morning. A sign advertises a product you saw in town yesterday. A gesture mimics a popular dancer's routine from the local vaudeville stage. These references were ephemeral, meant to resonate immediately with audiences who lived in that moment. Modern cartoons often aim for timelessness, diluting cultural immediacy in favor of long shelf life. In 1930, catching a subtle nod to daily life created a thrilling connection between viewer and animator, a sense that the world on screen existed alongside your own. Imagine laughing quietly, knowing you get the joke in a way that only contemporary viewers could. That fleeting intimacy was electric. You felt seen, clever, and engaged in a secret conversation across the screen, a conspiratorial wink that made each short unforgettable. Can you feel the joy of that shared understanding, the excitement of recognizing something from your own life transformed into playful chaos? That immediacy made every viewing richer, turning cartoons from passive entertainment into active, participatory delight. Animators often experimented with live-action backgrounds. Animators would often place a hand-drawn character over photographs of real streets, buildings, or landscapes, creating an uncanny blend of the tangible and the impossible. You can almost feel the texture of the inked lines over the subtle grain of the photograph, the faint scent of developing chemicals in the air, the scratch of pencil on celluloid as artists struggled to make motion feel natural atop a fixed, real-world background. Today, digital compositing can produce similar effects, but it's perfect, sanitized, and lacking the charm of human imperfection. In early Looney Tunes, the slight wobble of a hand-drawn foot on a static photograph made every step feel alive, playful, and slightly precarious. Audiences weren't just watching a cartoon, they were seeing fantasy interact with reality in a tactile, almost dreamlike way. Can you imagine the thrill of watching a drawn character leap across a cobblestone street that might exist outside the theater? That collision of worlds created wonder, awe, and a sense of unpredictability, something modern animation struggles to replicate, even with sophisticated software. Early cartoons pushed boundaries of taboo humor. Close your eyes and picture a packed theater in 1930. On screen, a character winks, performs a mischievous gesture, or a background prop takes on a subtly risque shape. These gags were daring but carefully coded, meant to amuse adults without offending theater owners or alienating children. Today, adult humor in animation is often explicit or obvious, but back then, catching one of these sly jokes required attention, cleverness, and a sense of complicity with the animators. It made audiences feel like insiders, sharing a secret thrill with the creators. You can almost hear the faint nervous laughter ripple through the crowd as someone recognizes the joke, a tiny heartbeat of rebellion hidden in slapstick chaos. That layer of subtlety made every viewing interactive. Audiences weren't just watching, they were decoding, discovering, and connecting with the cartoon in a personal, intimate way. Can you feel that thrill, the sly smile at a hidden joke only you noticed? That sense of conspiratorial delight is part of what gives early Looney Tunes a magic that resonates decades later. Voice actors often performed multiple characters in one take. Imagine a small, echoing booth, a single microphone hanging overhead. One performer switches effortlessly between voices, a squeaky Bosko, a grumbling antagonist, a shrill background character, all in real time. There were no digital edits or infinite retakes. Everything had to be delivered live with precise timing to sync with every frame. You could almost hear the rapid inhalation before a high-pitched laugh, the subtle shift in tone as a character sneaks, jumps, or panics, the tiny human imperfections giving life to ink and paper. Today, voice acting is polished and segmented, edited until perfect. But in 1930, each take carried energy, immediacy, and authenticity. Imagine hearing a single human voice morph seamlessly into multiple personalities, each one dancing across the screen with unique rhythm. That real-time performance added a layer of vitality, almost like a live concert accompanying the visuals. Can you feel the exhilaration, knowing the character's laughter, panic, and triumph came from a single person performing in a tiny room, their heartbeat entwined with the audience's delight? Animators reused frames for efficiency, but added subtle variety. Picture a crowded studio, animators leaning over tables, each responsible for dozens of frames. To save time, they would reuse sequences, characters walking, spinning, jumping, but they did so with tiny alterations. An eyebrow raised here, a foot shifted there, or a slight tilt of the head to suit the context. You can almost feel the hum of pencils moving rhythmically across paper, the faint smell of ink and erasers, the subtle tension as artists tried to balance economy with expression. Today, reusing motion is often mechanical and obvious, but in 1930, the subtle shifts ensured the animation felt fresh and alive, as if nothing was ever repeated. Audiences didn't see the trick, they saw fluidity, spontaneity, and character. Can you sense the ingenuity required, the artistry of creating something both efficient and endlessly engaging? That hidden layer of craftsmanship is what allowed early Looney Tunes to maintain such frenetic energy while still feeling cohesive. The early shorts shaped a century of animation. Finally, imagine the flickering images of 1930 projecting into a darkened theater. You watch Bosko bounce, stretch, and whirl across the screen. Hear music and sound effects that sync perfectly with every movement. Notice subtle gags layered in the background, and feel the pulse of live performance translated into ink and celluloid. That combination of experimentation, rhythm, imperfection, and audacity set the foundation for everything that followed. Animators learned that breaking rules, bending reality, and daring to play with audience expectation could create something more than entertainment. It could create joy, wonder, and emotional connection. Today, when you watch modern animation, much of its DNA comes from these shorts: exaggerated motion, synchronized soundtracks, humor layered for multiple audiences, and the seamless blending of chaos and structure. Can you feel the thrill of looking at your favorite cartoon in a new way, knowing that its lineage stretches all the way back to those tiny black and white experiments, hand-drawn on fragile celluloid over 90 years ago? That sense of legacy, magic, and human ingenuity is what makes early Looney Tunes not just a historical artifact, but a living, breathing source of inspiration for anyone who loves animation. Watching these early shorts today, it's impossible not to feel awe. Every frame, every squeak, every stretch and wobble is a testament to human imagination, perseverance, and the audacious joy of creation. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to watch another fascinating video like this, click on one of the boxes on your screen right now.